Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today on Light Talk, we are talking about your ears, inventory, and dance clubs.
And this is Anne in San Clemente, California.
And this is David in Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen humans. I don't know. It's something like that.
We're asexual photons.
Asexual Photons. Welcome to episode 102. And as you all have heard, we have our wonderful Lumen sister with us, Anne McMills.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
The queen of Lumen humans.
The Lumen humans.
We're the humans.
The human Lumen queen.
So, for the people who saw us at LDI, this is like a flashback, right? So, a flashback to when the four of us were last together. And that was one. Has it been that long? Have we done a show with you since LDI?
I don't think all four of us.
The question, though, is Anne wearing her hat?
I am not. My hat is at my office at school. Sorry.
Oh, so you wear it around campus so people recognize you immediately?
Oh, yeah, every day, all day long. And I have a sticker in my office window, too, a Light Talk sticker. I feel very fancy.
Hey, we have some big news. And actually, this news is about 2 weeks old, but we're going to just say it now because we forgot to say it in the last episodes.
Let me ask the question. What's new, David?
What's new is that our crack promotion staff at Light Talk Central came back from their 6-month meditation retreat and decided to actually get back to work and check the latest stats. We have been boasting about reaching 67 countries for some time now. Well, that crack staff just discovered that the number of countries who actually waste their time listening to us has risen to 103.
Wow.
103?
That's amazing.
That's like a fever, man. 103 is a fever.
It's more than 102.
Wait a minute. How many countries are there in the world?
Good question.
103.
That's right. There's 103.
North Korea is now listening to us, as is Antarctica.
All I know is that 2 of the new countries are Trinidad and Tobago. But I think they only count as one country.
Trinidad and Tobago.
But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But we have Africa. We've got them all. And what's so amazing is that people actually take the time all over the globe to listen to this crazy little podcast. And now that Anne's on, Anne, you can say hi to all the new countries.
Hello, new countries.
All
All 103 that are new.
Say goodnight, Gracie. What is that?
Anne is going to take us into the universe. She's going to take us to the planet Mars, to Pluto, and places on out there. The broadcast is slowly drifting across the universe right now. Aliens somewhere are going, who is this Anne McMills?
And on the asteroids that they're 3D printing on and all that.
Oh,
that's where
3D printing on the asteroids. I love it.
Or is it meteorites?
It has a galactic library full of books.
This is like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes, I've got my towel.
We're going to all end up in one weird planet because they wanted to get rid of us off the planet Earth.
I think it's because of Anne we now have 103 countries.
No, that's all you. I haven't been on in a while.
That's true. We'll see what happens next week.
If it goes down, it's Anne's fault. No.
So let's get started. Steve has our first listener question.
Okay, Ben, all the way from the UK, writes, do you wear a headset at a concert gig if you are not the shot caller? Ben, not only do I wear a headset, I wear shooter's muffs. I'm trying to block out that noise all over the place. And for those who might be listening who's not sure what he's talking about, a shot caller would be someone who is calling follow spot cues also. So in my young days, I'd wear a headset and I would call follow spot cues, but these days I've got someone who's calling follow spot cues for me. But yes, I wear a headset. I mean, one is to kind of hear what the shot caller is doing. And in the old days, I would wear a single muff headset, but I got out of that fast, and I moved to a double muff, and then I actually went to having a custom ear plug made. Because, a conversation is about 65 dBs, and if I go to a concert, then a concert range is about 100 to 120 dBs, which puts it in the same kind of category as a chainsaw. So, typically your ears can only handle 110 dBs for about 2 minutes. And after that, you actually start damaging damaging your hearing a little bit. So I think from a safety point of view, I would always wear something to protect my hearing at a concert. What do you guys do?
Well, I haven't done rock and roll, but I have gone to concerts with my partner, Jonathan. And Jonathan spent some of his career working as a sound technician, essentially, in various rock and roll gigs or whatever you would call it. And so when we go to concerts, he's so sweet. He brings those little like earplugs that you squish inside your ear just to watch the concert. So I imagine working on a concert, you would want to watch your hearing as well.
There's a great YouTube audio. It's actually an audio thing. It's a cartoon animation over an actual audio recording of the shot caller for Pink Floyd in 1970. Have you seen that? Oh,
yes,
it's
I heard that.
Hysterical.
I saw that. Yes, I've seen it. The cartoon. We should post that on the Facebook. It is hysterical.
So if you want to hear what a
is
shot
funny.
caller sometimes has to put up with, at least in the 70s, I'm sure people are much more responsible, professional now. You will hear it, and it's quite funny.
I have a serious thing to say about this. Even I have not worked that much in rock and roll like Steve has, but I went to a lot of concerts as a kid. But if we're going to talk about hearing, and the health of hearing, I wear 2 hearing aids, so I have hearing loss, and I didn't really have hearing loss until I was in my early 30s, and I would attribute it to not taking care of my ears. So in concerts that I went to as a spectator, in shops where I worked cutting dado joints or other lumber, setting up sound systems and having my ears in places when things were being tested and test tones were being run and getting doses of high decibel sound. So I did lose hearing from I think we did not have the sort of the sensitivity or the concern about that in decades prior. So I think to take that seriously is really, really important. And the worst thing about having hearing loss is not the person who has the hearing loss, but the people around them who become agitated and frustrated with the person with the loss. It's very difficult to convince somebody with loss to do something about it. So I think it's a serious subject, and I think it's certainly a workplace hazard. So I would just encourage everybody to, like Steve says, to particularly if what's ironic, the people with the worst hearing are musicians.
Yep, me.
It is a self-perpetuating problem, because here's what happens: you're in the pit, you can't hear, so you start playing louder, and then your hearing gets worse, so you keep playing louder. So it keeps perpetuating itself. And we had somebody come to our college and talk to the School of Music about this hazard, and it's very difficult to get a good blend or a good balance if you can't hear properly. Our new engineer is asking us to buy these individual mixes.
In-ear monitors, IEMs.
Yeah.
Things have changed
Everybody
now.
puts that on. They get the house mix, and then they can adjust it for themselves. So it's really kind of fascinating. But I think that the health part of it is to be taken seriously.
Well, I've been playing in rock and roll bands since I was 13 years old. And I actually did some serious damage at a concert I played at about 5 years ago, where I actually heard ringing in my ears for about 4 days. It was actually a roar. It wasn't just ringing. It was a roar. And I knew I screwed up. And I normally wore earplugs. This one night, I forgot them. And I stuck some like toilet paper in my ears. And I went to the doctor, and he said, well, you've got tinnitus, and I'm going to send you to a specialist. In the meantime, I'm going to give you a prescription for Xanax. And I said, oh, wow, does Xanax help, with the ringing? He goes, no, it'll keep you from killing yourself from the ringing.
My goodness.
So be careful when you're working in these places. This happened to me the other day. I was at a tech rehearsal, and the sound designer was blasting these levels and really loud and, without warning us. So even in the theater, we are all subject to this type of damage. So be very, very careful.
There's 2 little nerdy things to know about this. The first thing is that if you're at a concert and you're standing 6 feet away from someone and you can't hear them, then you're in a danger zone. Yep. You are in a decibel range that is damaging your hearing. The second thing is, for my brothers and sisters out there who are young and touring, don't buy foam earplugs.
No, waste.
Foam earplugs don't do anything. You want to go by a music store and get an earplug that filters the sound. Foam will take care of some stuff, but really it's only taking care of the low frequencies. If you go to a concert, sometimes you'll find that your head hurts by the end of the evening. What's happening is that person mixing the sound is having hearing loss also, and they're having a hard time with high-end frequencies. So they're cranking the high-end frequencies up, and that's what's kind of piercing your brain and making your head hurt so badly.
Actually, I would go one step further. Bypass the music store, go to an audiologist, and have some earplugs custom made.
Sure.
They actually pour
Why
in a
not?
mold. That's what I have. And that's what I got years ago when I was really concerned about the type of decibels that my band was playing on stage. So it's not that expensive, and in a lot of cases, your health insurance will pay for it.
I have an urban legend question tied to this.
Yeah.
During my Broadway days, there was this urban legend, I think, that some lighting designer in England had sued because of hearing problems from all the squealing and things that you get. Do you know if that's true, or I wonder if our listeners know?
I don't know for a fact, but boy, have I suffered hearing loss
Yes,
from
me too.
sound engineers who have like completely fed back the headsets. You got to be real careful, and that's one of you guys said something about you guys bring your own headsets to the techs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you see, I don't, and that's one thing I regret not doing it. I'm going to just start doing it. I'm going to buy a pair of good headsets and bring them with me, just so that you know that you're not going to get blown away.
Does that help, though? Like if it's plugged into the comm system like everybody else?
If somebody drops their headset on the floor or creates feedback, I don't know if your own headset can save
Yeah,
you
it's
from
a
that.
sanitary thing. Who
Yeah.
wants like to have somebody,
It's a sanitary-
greasy hair,
Right.
on the muffs, and then you put it in your ear, then all of a sudden
No,
you come
it's
down
just
with
a
an
matter-
ear
yeah.
infection,
Or
right?
somebody coughs into it?
Don't-
You actually could have your headset tuned so that it's going to cost you more, but at a certain dB level, the headset cuts out.
Ooh.
Ooh.
So, anything, let's say over 90 dBs, the headset just cuts out as far as
Interesting.
what you're hearing.
Or it could attenuate. Maybe it could attenuate and keep it at like 80 dBs instead of cutting out.
Exactly.
A really important discussion, though, because that is an actual workplace hazard that we lighting designers deal with.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But yes, moving on. Cindy from Anaheim asks, in a recent episode, you talked about top hats, but you didn't mention how eyelashes and other variations are used. Can you talk a little bit about that? Well,
We did. There was a long thread on
you know
the
what?
Facebook page.
No. I'm with Cindy because I was the one, I listen to you in my car often, and every time someone said flecked, I would yell flocked at the car.
Fleck, flop, glare, and flare.
Thank you, Anne. Well, it's a good question. I mean, why would you use if we're going back to that traditional kind of what John McKiernan put on the site? Why would you use a full top hat versus a half top hat?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, you mentioned top hats, you mentioned eyelashes, which are also known as half hats, but you didn't mention short hats. So there's all these different variations, right? And I think Cindy wants to know more about what that's for. And I would just say the top hat discussion was excellent, by the way. But the eyelash, I think one of the things that people talk about with eyelash is because it's only half of a half hat, right? Like if you cut it, how would you say that? Like, down the round part.
You chamfer the ends. I guess.
Chamfer. I love that
Yeah.
word. Chamfer.
But it's interesting because some people really prefer, I call them half hats usually, really prefer half hats because with a top hat, you still see the reflection on the opposite flocked side if you're sitting in the audience. So some people prefer half hats for that reason, that there isn't an opposite side. But then, of course, if you're next to a border or something, it does cause flare, so you want a full top hat.
Also, if you're trying to control the size of the flare and beam a bit, if you go back to film, what I was referencing, I think was Mole Richardson made a top hat, and then half the distance from the end of the top hat to the frame was a half hat, and then half that distance was a quarter hat, and then half that distance, which is a top hat that's only about an inch long, was a pancake. And that was kind of
pancake. That's
a
interesting.
pancake.
I don't know pancake, but I know short hat, which I think is sort of what you were saying.
Short
like,
hats.
Like
Yeah,
a half hat's
shorties.
a whole, or I'm sorry, top hat's a whole top hat, but a half hat is half that length of the snoot part, right?
Yeah.
In architecture,
Right.
these
Yes,
are called
I've heard
snoots,
them
right?
called
This is
shorty.
the most
Shorties?
ridiculous conversation I've ever heard in my
great.
life. Okay.
But the short hat is when you're using like a 50 degree, because a top hat will actually cut off some of the beam because it's too long. So you need a short hat with a 50 or a 70 or a 90, that kind of thing. So all of these tools have different reasons that you would use them, you know?
And if you're using something like a Source 4 Junior, get into that 50 degree, even a shorty doesn't work. You need to be into pancake world, about an inch long, because it cuts everything off.
That's a
pancake.
thick
There's
pancake.
some real fine tuning with top hats.
Yeah, it's a very important tool, and I think people don't know a lot about them, you know? So
That's
I think
right.
Cindy's question was excellent, as was your discussion last time with the fleck.
Well, no, it's fleck, flock, glare, and flare.
That's right.
I'm writing it up now.
Writing
for
it
this
up.
week's
Write
show.
it up. Okay. Stan, you have the next question, buddy.
Sarah in Amsterdam wants to know, do you bother storing cut gels? And if so, what is your storage and inventory method? And for extra bonus points, she wants to know, what's a good Gobo storage method? Well, all I can tell you is, I'm not working in a rental house anymore or a production house. I'm working at the university, so I can just tell you, we have a lot of time in our hands, and we have students who have lots of time that we have come in to do work. So we do store cut gels. We do separate them into file folders by size and by number for different types of fixtures. And until we are very careful about where we use the wax pencil to mark the gels with their number in a lower corner of the gel, not in the middle, because the wax might heat up in a tungsten filament and make the gel burn out in the center prematurely. So we're good with that. On my really, really fancy stuff, like my Luminate, I actually label them with a label maker, right? So we do all of that, as well as our sheets. And the storage method for gels is file cabinets, old school, with file folders and the names of the gels. And the inventory, though, we do inventory sheets. We don't inventory cuts, and that goes in an Excel spreadsheet that everybody can access. But for Gobos, this is useful. We also use an Excel spreadsheet on the same sheet with a different file, different tab in the Excel, but we put the name of the Gobo, we put the manufacturer, the number, and then it's so easy now to just go to the website and right-click and save the image, and we pop the image of that Gobo right next to it. And if we know they're in bad condition or who bought them, there could be a little note section. So we get a little bit sort of, it's easy for a designer to just go into that file and see what we have. So we do all of that, Sarah, and I hope that helps.
Well, I have to say, people saving cut gels helps me with budgets every time I do a show, because I'm always using more than I could afford. And so thank gosh they've got, gel storage. But I typically don't get an inventory of gels from theaters. I just send out my plot and then they look at what they have. Sometimes I've gotten Gobo inventories from theaters, which is helpful. But again, I usually just design my show and send it out. And then when they say you don't have enough money, I look back at their inventory.
Yeah, do you have good breakups?
I think what Sarah's asking is, what can I do to make it better? Should I have a milk crate or a file folder? So I think Stan answered that.
I saw a Gobo storage method I liked once that was like I don't know if you can find these as much anymore, but the old floppy disk 3-ring binders pages.
I've seen that.
So that's
Yes,
the
I've seen that
perfect
method.
size for an A or B size Gobo. And so you put it in there and label it, and you could flip through them and stuff. And they would paste the picture of the Gobo on the front of that little disc thing. And so it was really great that way. So I don't know if that earns bonus points, but I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one, and I've seen that method, and I didn't really answer her completely on the Gobo storage. We actually use in the old days there were these things called index cards. Some of them were 3x5, and some of them were larger, and you could buy a metal box made for index cards, and it had separators. And I think that's how they started it at the University of Florida, and I think that's still how we do it. You are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers, and Light Talk is sponsored by...
It's Pet Sweat of Japan, and from across the pond, the cheeky rigor of Sheffield. The summer touring season is once again upon us. The trucks are loading, the buses are being freshened up, and you, my friend, are packing your kit. you are looking forward to getting back in the saddle. But load-ins are long, hard, hot work. Let's face it, by showtime, you are sweating. What are you going to do about those unsightly stains under your arms?
Oh, no.
Well, Pet Sweat of Japan has the answer, so no one will ever see you sweat again. Introducing the Armpit Clip-On Cooler Fan. Barely the size of a pack of smokes, each one clips onto your t-shirt sleeves and pumps cool, refreshing air to your armpits. Want complete cooling comfort? Check out our cargo pants model. Just open your fly, clip it on, and power up. You can even top off the optional scent tanks with your favorite cologne from the cheeky rigor of Sheffield. Ask about our monthly subscription service so you never run short. I use Funky Roadcase. Order now, and Pet Sweat will throw in our essential American stagehand phrasebook. This is a must-have for any non-English speaking production touring the States. Learn the most common American stagehand phrases. Phrases like, "I'm smoking your follow spot, sexy sailor." Or my personal favorite, "When I saw our stage manager changed his wig, I felt summer would be over." Pet Sweat of Japan, just like NATO, only backstage.
I got to say something before we go back. You know, it's great to have Anne on the show because she's like our barometer of tasteless things.
Yeah.
Because when Anne gets real silent, whatever we're doing is totally tasteless.
Yeah, I was thinking sort of inappropriate. Wasn't sure I should be a part of this episode.
We can hear her cringing.
Anne is on the phone right now, calling Pet Sweat. She's ordering it for Jonathan right now.
No, I'm not.
Just get me off this program. This is going to ruin my career.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to call HR. Is there an HR?
No.
They'll call HR. That's what we need.
I'm quite impressed that David was listening to me not saying something.
Not listening to nothing. Silence. I felt it. I felt it coming from there. So, Anne, how would you rate that sponsor?
Ooh, I don't know. Not so sure I'm into that one. From a 1 to 5 top hats, I'd give it 1 top hat.
1 top hat. Oh, no.
I just want to point something out here. I want just to be honest about this. This is a real product you can buy in Japan.
Oh my goodness!
Really?
They
have
little clip-on fans for your armpits. They take a couple AA batteries, and you see these people, whoever standing in the street with these little fans just going at it.
This is dangerous. This sounds really, really dangerous.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Hey, those ducks are back, and that tells us that it is time for our Let's Talk About segment. And today, our wonderful Lumen Sister Anne came up with a terrific Let's Talk About subject. So, Anne, I'm going to let you introduce it.
Okay, well, I just thought, there's all these conferences out there, at least in America. There's SATC, there's USITT, there's LDI, there's IRTA, all these different things. And I wondered if our listeners might not be familiar with all of them. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about how they all differ. What do you guys think?
Oh, great idea.
Yeah.
I have a joke first.
Joke. He's going to start off with a joke.
Well, I'm just going to start out and say something funny. One, I think there's too many of these because I can't go to all of them. There's like 8 more of them. There's Light and Building. There's Light Fair. There's this one. There's
good.
Pro Lights and Sound. There's like. They're all competing with each other. I wish they could just do. I'm all for socialism too, but a little consolidation of this would be nice. And the other thing, I'm going to USITT this year, and I hadn't been in since David and I were discussing this. I haven't been there since it was in Long Beach when I introduced my little fiber optic stuff. But I have to say, I've never been anywhere. There were so many theater geeks all in one.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
I don't know about that.
All I know is that that was last time I was at USITT, at that same one here in Long Beach. And I'm going this year too, because I'm actually meeting some people to talk about some LED research that I'm doing right now. USITT has always been mostly about education. Mm-hmm. Educational theater, and people are really focused in. All these different conventions have different reasons. Like LDI, why they're there is totally different from ProLight or like LightFair. LightFair is all architectural, which is fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And USITT, SETC, mostly toward education.
In support of USITT, they do some important work beyond just academia in setting some standards. So like the DMX 512 protocol was a USITT initiative. There are some really good things.
I wouldn't bring that up.
Really?
Well, you know what I
Come up
mean?
with something better than DMX.
Well, it moved us forward. That adoption of standards has, and we're going to have an interview with Steve Terry, who's going to talk about how that really changed the industry. We could criticize it now, but at the time, it was a huge leap forward, and it made more interoperability between technologies. And it was USITT and those people getting together at that conference and setting standards that really does serve a very important purpose.
Well, I think it's just important if you're thinking about going to some of these conferences, at least in the U.S. Like, outside of the U.S., there's plenty as well, like Plaza or the quadrennial. I can never say that word. All those different things. Good. But like Stan said, how can you afford all of these, right? I can't either. So you kind of need to know what you're looking for. And I think about LDI as sort of where the pros go. There's like, you'll see the most professionals there. You'll also see the most concert work there, like in terms of the show floor. There's all sorts of concert fixtures and things like that.
The diversity is great.
Yeah,
that's what I love.
It's all the
television,
big showy
everything's
industries.
There.
Yeah,
everything's there.
And it's sort of like for students. My argument used to be, if a student had to choose, a lighting student in particular, let me just zone in on that, between USITT and LDI, I always encourage them to go to LDI because of David's point that there was a lot of academics and there was a few dozen booths, but that's not where you want to work. Right, you really want to get into the profession, so you meet more people working in the profession at LDI, I think, than you do at USITT. Meeting other academics doesn't really help your career move out of academia into the profession.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's what that person needs, because LDI could be really intimidating for a first-time student. Looking for jobs or looking at the show floor, things like that. So I think it's definitely something they should go to, and I encourage it. But I also think USITT has a lot of value because it's so student-centered. And that's one of the things I love about it.
True.
Like the show floor is so much more fun on USITT to me because of all the swag that's out there. So the students all gather like a mob at the front of the doors ready for it to open, and there's all these rumors about who's got the best swag and all that stuff, and they go racing around the floor looking for the best swag. And I think that's really
swag
fun.
Swag sniffers. That's what they need. I'm going to stand at the front door and sell some swag sniffers.
That should be one of our sponsors. Is that a thing?
Yeah, well, it was a sponsor. It was at our first LDI. Yeah.
And it's not that it's all about swag or something, but that sort of like the fun of it and the energy of it. Like it's very open to students, very welcoming on the floor. Like they know you might be a student. They're very open and they talk to you a lot, and so you might not get all that individual attention at LDI. So it's just kind of a different thing. And then SETC's is more of a job fair, and then IRTA is all about grad school. So you have to think about, what you're looking for in a conference when you go.
I think you nailed it right there. And the thing about these different conferences is you don't have to be rich to go to them. What you have to consider is being a bit strategic. I think you could go to LDI once every 3 years. The industry's just not moving that fast. Mm-hmm. So if you're on a budget, once every 3 years to go to Las Vegas. Every other year, maybe go to USITT. Maybe go to something else. But you can spread this out. So I think Anne is right. I think USITT is really geared toward students and young professionals and academics, and LDI is really geared toward people who are making decisions about purchases.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it's so important to network. It's so important to meet people. USITT is on my 12-year plan. I go every 12 years. LDI is on my every year plan. And that's the way it's been for as long as I remember.
Yeah.
Even as an educator. I mean, mostly I'm a professional designer, but I'm also a full-time educator. So I just think it's worth it for students, especially lighting designers, go to LDI. Very, very important. And take all those great classes My God, I did a projections class there. It was so valuable. It was fantastic. And there are companies that will give out scholarships. I know ETC does this. Several others I know do it. So it's not all about money. You know, the money sometimes is there. And check with your own school. They have grants too for students. I know many of my students get grants from Associated Students. I'm sure there are organizations like that at all universities. So take the time, do it. And I think, Anne, you're absolutely correct. I mean, find out what you want, what you need. But if you're a lighting designer, you better go to LDI. That's all I have to say. So Steve has our last question of the day.
And this comes from Rio in Japan. And she writes, I like dance clubs.
Woo!
What would you say are important lighting design choices you need to make? Well, I've never lit a dance club. I've gone to some dance clubs, and I can tell you what I like. I like a lot of haze, and I like a lot of CO2 jets going off. I think what with the dance clubs that I have seen that I think are really kind of interesting is the lighting design brings a lot of energy into the room, and you can quickly change the mood. So I think the better clubs make an immersive experience for you, and it's constantly changing, and it's not always flashing on and off. They're really building an entertainment experience for you, and they're able to do that quickly on, decent consoles that allow you to have something running and busking on top of that. The one thing that I would say, if you're going to do a little dance club mixing, that I would not do, I would not use your console in sound active mode. I think that's really kind of minor league. So sound active, the console is adjusting the lights based on the sound coming in. It's a sound card that makes the lights, pan and tilt and change color based on the rhythm of the sound. And that works about 50% of the time. And then at the other 50% of the time, the lights are just doing something wacky there or strobing aimlessly, and they don't quite know what they're doing. I don't know. Anne, you're a big clubber. What do you like in dance clubs?
I was in my younger days. I do love to dance, but I have not lit one. But I would say, because I've been to some in New York and Chicago and London, I would say that I think the element of surprise is very important. And it makes me think of this one we loved in New York we used to go to that had, as you were on the dance floor, suddenly the trusses above you with all the fixtures on it would move. So it would come in a little bit sort of slowly and change different things. And it was really exciting. And then it would sort of ascend back into the ceiling. And then at some point it would snow all over you. And so it was really exciting. All of a sudden it was those, that soap bubble snow everywhere. And so it was just that kind of thing. I think you need a lot of gags for a dance club because people are looking to have fun and be excited and just amp up the energy even more.
Back in the Saturday Night Fever days, they had that lit up floor. Remember when the floor would light up in squares?
Yeah.
Nowadays, you can get LED tiles on the floor. And if you go to LDI or a lot of these places we were talking about a second ago, you'll see that there's an amazing variety of LED video that is made for dance floors nowadays. And that changes everything. I do want to mention one thing, and Steve really hit it on the nose. It's all about energy. That's really what dance clubs are about. It's about energy. So if you have that energy and it's working with the music, it's there. That's all you need.
I haven't lit one, but when I was a kid growing up in New York, there was a company, and they still exist, called Times Square Lighting on 44th Street. And we used to love to go there because they had the cheap stuff that you could get, but you could make really beautiful effects. And I went to all these clubs. Some of them were quite famous, and I'll name three. The Red Parrot, Studio 54, and 2001 Space Odyssey, which is the dance club that was in the movie that David mentioned, Saturday Night Fever. And the one thing about them that I think made them special conceptually is they all had a theme of some kind. They had some kind of unifying idea that made them unique, that separated them from just a bunch of lights doing whatever. And did they have surprise? Yes. And did they have special moments? Yes. And did they have some gag? Absolutely. But they sort of had class. And those were the ones that attracted, people who had it's like you really want to go there because it was distinctive and special. So I think from a design perspective, you want to conceptualize that club with some kind of theme or conceptual idea that gives the club a certain classiness. And I just think that worked back then, and I think that would still work.
And the great thing about that is, Stan, is that with the technology nowadays, with these types of video panels that could be everywhere in the club, is that you can have a different theme every night. Because a lot of these clubs do that. I have a club right down the street called Ripples, and every night is a different night. And it's fantastic. And if you remember correctly, way back in those days, they used, and I'm sure that Josh will talk about, Josh White used to do this, was used a lot of 16 millimeter film, right? Now all that's video. So it's really, really cool. I love dance clubs. I really do. I love going. Now, it's not like I go out every night, but every now and then I'll go to it, especially in Vegas, and you will see all this, but it's all super high tech. So I think that all that's fantastic.
I'm going to Applebee's later tonight.
Applebee's!
Yeah, that's a real theme going on there.
Hey, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again, you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers and Sister. Check out our website on lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
And just remember, if you choose to litigate, we have hired an even better law firm now, the firm of Fleck, Flock, Flare, and Glare, and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
I am Snoot.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen family, coming to you from
Long Beach.
Gainesville,
Republic of Texas.
And San Clemente, California.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss how do you start writing light cues, how to get international gigs, and do you really need to be a science geek to be a lighting designer?
all of that, my friends, and the new sponsor. We are the light-talking Lumen Humans, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from
Bye,
London.
everybody.
So long, everyone.